Okay, well, welcome to everyone who has joined us. My name is Laura Isles. I'm one of the co-directors of the North Central IPM Center. The North Central IPM Center is one of 4 regional IPM centers supported by the USDA NIFA Crop Protection and Pest Management Regional Coordination Program. This webinar supports the mission of the center to support IPM across our region via networking by allowing the sharing of information and resources. We really encourage you during this seminar to type questions in the bottom in the question and answer section of your Zoom. And after it's completed, I'll read off those questions. And so with that, I'm really excited to welcome Erin Lizotte. She's the IPM coordinator and senior IPM educator at Michigan State University. And she's going to talk about their program highlights. So welcome, Erin.
Thanks, Laura, and thanks everybody for showing up today to hear a little bit about the Michigan State University IPM program. So I'm excited to share with you kind of what we've been up to and hopefully find some opportunities for collaboration across the region. So I wanted to start off just with a little bit of a primer about Michigan agriculture, just because we are kind of unique in the region, or maybe we like to think we're unique in the region. But we're a really diverse agricultural community. So we produce more than 300 commodities. We're second in crop diversity only to California. And a big reason for that is our location in the Great Lakes. And so as we look at the plant hardiness zone map for Michigan, you can see that we get a lot of warmer moderating effects from the Great Lakes. And so we're able to produce a lot of fruits and vegetables in those regions that might not be something we can cultivate in our sister states within the region. So we've got 47,000 farms in Michigan, averaging 211 acres. So obviously we do have some very large farms, but we also have a lot of smaller scale farms. So we work with a lot of stakeholders, particularly on these diversified specialty crop farms. The food and ag industry in Michigan contributes about $104 billion annually to the state's economy. So it's obviously very important to our state's economy. And the agri-food system as a whole accounts for an estimated 805,000 jobs, or about 20% of the state's workforce. So obviously critical to our state's economy and well-being. So just to give you an idea of some of the crops that we produce in Michigan, we're first in the nation for the production of asparagus, tart cherries, pickling cucumbers, dry black beans, chestnuts, and winter squash, among others. High producers of celery, fresh market cucumbers, spearmint oil, and squash. And we're third in the nation for apples, blueberries, fresh market pumpkins, the floriculture industry, rye, Christmas trees, and summer squash. Hopefully you guys caught that last part. We were talking about the production of all these different specialty crops in Michigan. And then we're moving into talking about some of the challenges and opportunities that we're facing. And I think this is probably familiar laundry list for all of us in the region, if not the country. But at the top there, I kind of emphasize this idea of limited resources. So I think, you know, apart from all of these specific challenges that we have, or opportunities for service, we might think of them that way. Limited resources, I think, is one of the biggest battles that we're facing in helping address these from an IPM perspective. So whether it's bandwidth, the number of graduate students we have working, access to resources or grant dollars for research or outreach, I think we're all kind of feeling the pinch there. And it, of course, has a cascading effect on what we're able to do to address these challenges. Another big issue that I think as IPM coordinators, we might be able to help address is consumer perception of IPM and pest management practices on the farm. So I think we're starting to see some drivers or pressures coming from the consumer or purchaser end of things versus science-driven decision-making on the farm. So talking about, you know, what's scientifically based versus what consumers read about on social media or might think about based on their sister-in-law's opinion, those types of things are a way that I think we can help mitigate some of those impacts that can be quite negative or burdensome for our IPM practitioners. Invasive pests is another one that, there's no end in sight in the waves of invasive pests that are coming into the country and the way they disrupt our IPM programs. So I think that's going to continually be something that we're going to have to work to address. And frankly, they seem to be coming in more quickly at a more rapid pace, probably just because of the pace of international trade and transit. Climate change, of course, that has to make the list. In Michigan, we are definitely experiencing the effects of climate change with changing wetting patterns, leading to more disease pressure in our region. We also have a lot of very early blooming perennial crops that are heavily affected by climate change, either by early warm-ups that push them into bloom before they should be, and then we end up with frost or freeze damage, uneven ripening, things like that are causing issues. Obviously, pesticide resistance remains a major concern. Farm profitability. So I know a lot of our farmers are struggling, and I hear regularly concerns about the costs of pesticides, these pesticide programs that are having to be implemented due to the amount of pest pressure we have, and kind of dealing with razor thin profit margins on these farms, if not deficits. Labor scarcity, obviously this comes into play when we're looking to implement some of our IPM programs. And then of course, regulatory challenges. So as we lose some chemistries to, re-registration issues and things like that, those challenges are an opportunity for us to help growers address these issues. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our IPM infrastructure at MSU. So I've only been in the coordinator position for about a year now. And I called this legacy infrastructure because I think it really is a legacy for our university to have these systems and supports in place to support IPM programming and IPM management strategies and adoption and awareness for producers and stakeholders. So we have our diagnostics clinic, which is our pest and pest ID clinic on campus, and they do not just plant identification, insect identification, but they can do virus testing, they can do weed resistance screening. So they really are very up to date on the technology. They continue to expand the suite of services that they offer, and they've been a really critical partner for all of our IPM researchers and outreach staff at MSU. We have our pesticide safety office, which I know some of those are really tightly connected at other universities, or even some of the IPM coordinators also act as the pesticide safety coordinator. At MSU, we're lucky to have a separate pesticide safety coordinator in John Stone, and he really oversees the training and support for all the licensed pesticide applicators in the state of Michigan. Of course, we have Extension, which is the outreach arm, and really services the applied research branch, which we have a great department. The College of Ag and Natural Resources houses a number of departments that generate research that's utilized to increase IPM. And then of course, our stakeholder partners are really important. We have excellent working relationships, and really a lot of our farmers provide the space. Sometimes they even will help implement management strategies, and we certainly have a lot of research that takes place on farm. And then last but not least, our EnviroWeather system is our series of weather stations around the states that feed real-time weather data into pest models, into irrigation models, and help growers make management decisions on the farm. And then that outer ring there are our larger partners on the federal or state level that really help support this program. And so I feel like we're really lucky at MSU to have all of this support and all of these groups working towards common goals. So on the research side of things, most of that takes place within our College of Ag and Natural Resources, which includes the departments we would expect to see working with an IPM program like the Department of Entomology, Plant, Soil, and Microbial Sciences. We also work closely with the Department of Fisheries and Wildlife, specifically when we're talking about our vertebrate pest management issues that we're trying to deal with. but we really work with colleagues from so many different departments and actually departments outside the college as well. So this is a look at our IPM outreach staff right now. So we have me and our communications manager, Mallory Marenfeld, up at the top there. We also have IPM educators, which are based out in the counties for the most parts, that cover consumer hort, fruit, vegetables, floriculture, greenhouse, and field crops. So a little bit, just kind of the big numbers from the last EIP or Extension Implementation Program grant cycle. During that 4 years, because we had that extension, we counted about 227,000 direct contacts, 365 educational programs, 20 demonstration plantings, and the publication of 1,771 educational articles. We average about 3.8 million page views annually for IPM related content. And our digest subscription, which our digest is really our IPM newsletter, increased by 58% to 65,000 subscribers as of, I think, the end of last year was the last time we did that count. And we're really closely looking at the types of information people are accessing, how they're accessing that information, and we're trying to make smart decisions about how we present information based off of what we know about our users. So this is just a snippet that I pulled from Google Analytics looking at how people visit. So not surprisingly, most people are getting to our web content via mobile devices, second via desktop, and then third via tablet. So we've worked really hard. Our web folks at MSU have worked really hard to make sure that all of our content is mobile friendly. And I think that has been a huge advantage for us as well as our stakeholders to be able to access that information from anywhere. We also looked at, how are they accessing or getting to this data? So we know, are they just Googling us? Are they clicking through a digest link? Is it via social media or an email link or a referral from an outside web page? I pulled the top articles by popularity for 2021. And interestingly, or maybe not surprisingly, it's how to choose and when to apply grub control products for your lawn. So oftentimes we see the most popular articles are those with the largest potential audience, right? So we've got a lot of stakeholders who have lawns in the state of Michigan. And so that is one of the top page views. But you can kind of get a sense of the breadth of the information that's available there, and also some of the readership numbers for those articles, which it's really satisfying when you take a lot of time to write an article to see that it is actually being utilized. So moving on to some of the current efforts that are underway, I wanted to focus a little bit on wildlife damage today, just because mostly I'm hoping to recruit some members for this North Central IPM Center working group. So this is a working group that was founded by myself and Dr. James Dedecker, who's a colleague at MSU. And really our goal was to fill a perceived gap in efforts related to wildlife damage on the farm. So as many of you know, wildlife damage is really episodic. 1 year it can be devastating, the next year there can be none. And it can also be frustrating to find effective and socially acceptable management strategies. Additionally, we found that the same farmers that are angry about, soybean browsed by white-tailed deer are also avid white-tailed deer hunters. So there's oftentimes a lot of conflicting feelings about wildlife. And so we pulled together this group that really is agency and university faculty and staff around the Great Lakes region primarily, although the greater Midwest is represented in the group. And it's a way for us to create resources, exchange information, and hopefully work towards some grant funding together. So we're currently in the midst of some monthly growing season meetings where we're starting out with a timely speaker who's going to kind of give us some professional development in this arena. And then we have grower or member reports rather, where we talk about what's going on in our area and possible resources or opportunities. So if you or someone you know would benefit from joining this group, please let me know. I'd be glad to add them to our list. I also really wanted to talk about invasive pest response, at least at MSU. So as I said, I've been in this position for about a year, so I'm still working to identify all the moving parts and how everything works. But I think MSU and our partners in Michigan have been doing a lot of hard work to really facilitate and get better at addressing invasive pests as they continue to arrive. So we have a collaborative system that pulls together MSU, our Department of Ag, Department of Natural Resources, and our cooperative invasive species management associations and others that are relevant as needed. And we work together to develop a response plan before and during invasive pest arrival. So those include things like tabletop exercises, communications meetings. And the IPM program really helps provide communication resources that are reliably up to date and centralized to minimize confusion. So we want to harmonize all of the communications that are coming out through the state agency as well as the university to make sure people understand what's happening and that it's the most current information. And I think looking at the great job Penn State has done with the spotted lanternfly issue, I think they've provided a real model for us for how we create and share information with other universities and other colleagues, because they really they provided so many ready to go resources for us, and we've continued to utilize those at MSU. So they've given us some ideas. Usually we're not the first point of invasive species detection. We get a while for things to creep in from the East Coast. But I think that, thinking about how we as IPM coordinators can tie in at a federal level to what's going on with invasive pests will be really helpful. So sometimes I feel like there's maybe not as much connection there for me as an IPM coordinator as I'd like. Also wanted to mention the IPM Central Podcast. So this is new. We've kind of just started developing this as a group, as our little IPM coordinator group. And we're looking to highlight the 50th anniversary of IPM this year with a series of episodes in 2022. So the goal of this podcast is to raise awareness of IPM innovation, history, adoption, benefits, challenges, and relevance. So just a very small goal. And our primary audience is university stakeholders, and our secondary audience is the general public. So far, we've got buy-in from a number of universities and agencies. And if you would like to record a brief episode, it's relatively pain-free, but get a hold of me and I'd love to schedule that and get an episode telling the story of IPM at your agency. Also, via the IPM program, we've been really working on bolstering our online resources for pesticide applicators. So I know it varies state by state, but in Michigan, we have kind of a core pesticide applicator curriculum, and then we have category curriculum depending on what system you're working in. So we launched a core review in 2021 that's a self-paced online course, and to date, not even the first full year, we've had 337 participants. And we are currently working on expansion plans for the next basically 2.5 years. And we're working closely with the National Pesticide Safety Education Center. Many of you know Tom Smith. He has a lot of experience in working through developing this online content, and it's really streamlined, really slick, really nice. And the first few things we're looking at are right-of-way, a general pest management section, and a turf section. And we're interested in looking for collaboration among the states where we might have overlap so that we could share some of the costs and workload on developing these. So basically we could rebrand these for different states and tweak them for your needed curriculum. So if that's of interest, then again, feel free to reach out. So to delve into the current extension implementation plan collaborators, I just wanted to touch on some of the awesome efforts that we have underway with this new team. So we have a lot of new faces at MSU. I don't know how it is at the other universities, but it feels like we're hiring new educators all the time. And we're working really hard to support those with IPM appointments that are working in that area. So first we have Anna Heck. Anna is an apiculture extension educator, and the goal of her work is to improve honeybee health through improved IPM awareness, knowledge, and adoption among beekeepers, growers, pesticide applicators, and educators. And she's kind of, I think, very wisely broken this up into two arenas, one focused on IPM for beekeepers and the other on pollinator stewardship for growers. And Anna's engaged with a lot of groups that you might be involved with, including the Managed Pollinator Protection Plans Working Group and the Michigan Beekeepers Association and the Honeybee Health Coalition. So she's doing excellent work in the pollinator arena. In communities IPM, our team members are Rebecca Finneran, Isabel Brandstrom, and David Lowenstein. And they're working on optimizing outreach tools and strategies that improve IPM awareness, knowledge, and adoption for residents, communities, and schools. So one of the things they're developing over this course of the grant is a diagnostics academy training, which is basically a curriculum training to teach diagnosticians, how to help with pest issues. So I'm wondering if that also might be something that would be valuable to other states that might have volunteers that also help with diagnosing pest issues. They also work to support the Michigan Lawn and Garden Hotline. They serve about 12,500 clients annually, so very popular program. And they're working on the installation of 8 visible smart habitat demo sites. And those can be focused on a number of goals. One of the most recent ones was focused on developing pollinator habitats. So those are very useful teaching tools as well. Our specialty crop IPM team is very large because we, of course, have all those diverse crops that we talked about, but we've got Ben Whirling, Heidi Lindberg, Jeremy Jubinville, Ben Phillips, Amy Irish Brown, and Mike Ranke. And they work in fruits, veggies, nurseries, greenhouse. Did I miss anybody? So there's lots of different topics and regions that they cover. The overall goal of this team is to optimize outreach tools and strategies that improve awareness, knowledge, and adoption. Oh, and I have vegetable growers in there, but it's among growers in general. And a lot of this team focuses real time on developing information based on trap lines and scouting that they do. They provide one-on-one consultation for growers as needed. They draft those crop reports and submit a lot of those articles that are published every year. And they also facilitate grower meetings, many of which are in season and on farm. A couple more projects this team sponsored over this current grant is continuing to update and improve the mobile friendly vegetable guide, strategic pest management planning for onions. And then there is some really cool work going on demoing biological control videos in greenhouses. And really this is just a snippet of the work that this team does. And then last but not least, we have our sole agronomic or field crops IPM educator. So we're currently, I think we have 3 field crops positions open at MSU. If you know anybody who's interested in field crops IPM. Monica's goal is optimizing outreach tools and strategies to improve IPM awareness, knowledge, and adoption among agronomic crop growers. So one of the early things in the lifespan of the grant was Michigan contributing to the annual online field crops IPM course and participation in a collaborative agronomic scouting online course. So hopefully that gave you kind of an overview of what we have going on at MSU. And that's what I brought.
Thank you so much, Erin. So at this time, if anyone has any questions for Erin, go ahead and type that in the question and answer little thing. You have to click it at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So Erin, one thing you talked about, invasive pests and kind of the networking that you're trying to do with all that. How can IPM programs, you think, better position themselves to help with all these new invasive pests continually coming in?
Yeah, well, so one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, and I mentioned, was formally having the IPM coordinators engage on some sort of national level of communication. I think developing a roadmap to responding to invasive pests that can be followed regularly. Everybody kind of knows their role, knows, what step 1 through 3 is. Those types of systems development are not always, the most glamorous, but I think they can be really helpful, particularly as you have expertise turnover at the federal, state level. All of those things can cause disruption in that area. So I'd like to see IPM coordinators more engaged on the national level when it comes to invasive pests.
Yeah, that's a really great idea. As you mentioned, very often we're not here in the Midwest, are often not kind of ground zero of some of these things. So we can look to our friends from the East sometimes.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
I mean, again, what do you think is we talk about, getting people to adopt IPM strategies and things like, what do you think are some of the impediments that we run into in getting people to adopt them?
Yeah, I think ease of adoption is something that we have to think about. I think the economic component is something that, we really didn't start to consider in earnest. Well, we probably always considered it, but we didn't talk about the economics of adopting IPM practices. So I think anytime we're recommending a new practice, we've got to be able to show the economic basis for that practice. So even though it's a tenet of IPM, I don't think it's one that we've done a good job of illustrating to growers, is showing them that cost benefit analysis type of information for IPM. I think making sure to focus on accessibility is really important. So I showed a little bit about how people are accessing online information, but we also have people who cannot access online information or may not, be able to speak English, or it might be their second language. And so how do we accommodate and assist those people? So thinking about accessibility, so we're accessing the stakeholders that maybe we haven't accessed in the past. So even though it may be a smaller sector of people, it's an area of growth for us as a program.
Yeah, those are very good points, very good ideas. One question we have from our listeners, Henry Murillo asks if you could share the contact information of the team members. I did share the web links. What's probably the easiest way for folks to track down those people?
Yep. So if you go to our webpage, ipm.msu.edu, and you click the people tab, they're all in there.
Thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks.